Hello and welcome to Verified Live. Let's start this hour with that breaking news that's been emerging in the last little while, because local media in Slovakia says the Prime Minister has been shot and injured in an incident in the last hour or so. Let me show you the pictures that have come into the BBC. They were taken in the immediate aftermath of this incident, and you can see there just the flurry of bodyguards in the moments after shots were fired. The Prime Minister was then rushed to hospital. The pictures also show a man being pinned to the floor and then arrested. Well, let's get the very latest. Let's speak to Sarah Senazova, who's a freelance journalist based in Bratislava. And Sarah, thank you for being with us. There must be great shock at this news.
Thank you for having me. Yes, indeed, this event sparked a huge wave of shock in Slovakia, both in terms of general population, but also with politicians who are obviously very shocked. And even the president has expressed her fear and her shock after this horrible event.
I want to just put back onto the screen the pictures of the immediate aftermath, because certainly these are moving pictures and you can see the emergency services getting into place. But the still pictures that we'll see in a second or two show just the immediate moments after. We're seeing a man apprehended, pinned to the floor, a flurry of activity, and then around the Prime Minister's car and motorcade, the efforts to get him first inside of the car and then rush him to hospital. What are you hearing about the whereabouts currently of the Prime Minister? Any sort of update in terms of his condition?
Yes, so I have been following breaking news on various Slovak news websites. What we are hearing right now is that Fico has been transported to a hospital in Banská Bystrica, which is a town in the center of Slovakia. There have been several sources that confirmed to Slovak newspapers, namely one of the biggest Slovak papers, Deník N, that in spite of the fact that Fico was injured in the abdomen and his foot and his arm, he should survive, and these injuries should not be life-threatening. However, there is a very recent post on Robert Fico's Facebook account that says that he still is in acute danger, and we will only know whether he will survive within the next few hours, depending on the treatment he will receive.
Sarah, let me just interrupt you, and apologies for that. I'll come back to you in a second or two, but I want to put onto the screen new video that has just come into us, and these are moving pictures, and you can see in those pictures the frantic efforts of those bodyguards, the security teams, actually getting the Prime Minister into that vehicle as the camera then spins off to show the man being detained and arrested. But I want to put those pictures again on a loop, because they are very, very dramatic pictures of the Prime Minister's. They literally are the moments after the shots are fired. Let me show you again. Here they are, and you can see him being just carried there. There were reports of bullet wounds to the abdomen, and that certainly would follow with just the position of the Prime Minister as he was carried there to the car. And the latest we're hearing from the hospital, that it appears that he's been taken into intensive care, and they are talking about him being shot and treated with wounds, plural. So that is a detail coming from a hospital spokeswoman, that he's been treated for shot wounds. So that suggests more than one wound from shots that are fired. It certainly seems from the pictures only one assailant, but we wait for more on that. We've been hearing from a variety of political leaders in the last little while. We heard from Ursula von der Leyen and other prime ministers. The UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak just also his first comment, talking about shocked to hear this awful news. All our thoughts are with the Prime Minister and his family, and that a thought echoed by a variety of European leaders as more detail emerges of this attack. Let's get the latest from our correspondent who is there in the region, Rob Cameron. And Rob, what more can you tell us that you are hearing?
So far, we believe that a total of 4 or 5 shots rang out as Robert Fico was emerging from that government meeting in the central town of Handlova. We believe 2 or 3 of those shots hit him, and the latest information that we have is that he was injured in the abdomen and possibly in the arm and the foot. Eyewitnesses, members of the crowd who were there to greet him, described seeing him falling to the ground and being lifted off the ground. And he was said to have blood on him. But exactly how serious those injuries are, we don't know yet. So the hospital spokeswoman in the local town of Handlova said that he was conscious. He was being taken to a higher grade hospital. We believe that is Banská Bystrica, which is the nearest big city in Slovakia, and that he was being receiving treatment in an intensive care unit for those injuries. Now, numerous sources have told Slovak media outlets, including Deniken, which is a very reputable news outlook in Slovakia, no friend of Robert Fico either. They say that his injuries are not life-threatening, but that's the information that we have on his condition so far.
And tell me, I know these are really early moments, so obviously it is a difficult question, but is there any early thought about what the possible motive is here, the motivations, who we think perhaps is behind this?
There isn't. It is early. The reports I've seen suggest that a 71-year-old man was arrested at the scene. He's the man that we saw being pinned to the ground. But what the motivation was, we don't know. But certainly Slovak politics are in an extremely febrile state at the moment, ever since Robert Fico was re-elected in the autumn and formed a new government, a government which has really set its sights on the country's criminal justice system. He's launched plans to dismantle the public broadcaster, Slovak television and radio, and also target NGOs. Those have led to mass demonstrations in cities and towns across Slovakia. But those demonstrations have been peaceful, and the opposition and indeed the temperature of Slovak politics, while it does rise on occasion, so far it has been fairly peaceful. So this incident is really something quite out of the ordinary. It's an extraordinary development, this assassination attempt. I think we can say that now for sure, on the leader of the country, the Prime Minister.
I want to put some more pictures. Images are coming in all of the time, but this just taken from a different angle and shows you the reaction from some of the crowds in the immediate aftermath. And there you can see the assailant just being wrestled to the ground and just being, there it is, some of the latest pictures, just as he was being detained. Tell me, Rob, a little more about what this event was. Was this something that the public knew that the Prime Minister would be attending? Where was this? What was actually going on?
Yes, they did. The Slovak government under Robert Fico has made a point of holding these government meetings in various towns and cities around Slovakia. It brings him closer to the people, closer to his voters. And each time that the cabinet does meet in these towns, and this town was right in the center of Slovakia, quite far from the capital, Bratislava, then he's surrounded by crowds of supporters, many of them who adore him, frankly, and are very much in favor of the moves that he has unveiled in recent months. So certainly he does attract a certain following, I suppose. He has a lot of public support. It's also fair to say that he is a man who is very keen to burnish his public image. He has a strong social media presence on Facebook. He is very, very quick to produce very slick videos whenever he's emerging from a government meeting or a summit of the European Council, that sort of thing, to stress that he's been fighting for Slovak sovereignty and defending the interests of Slovaks. So he's very canny. He's a very canny political operator. He's already been forced to step down once in 2018 following the murder of an investigative journalist that was looking into links between his party and organized crime. But last year he made something of a remarkable political comeback and has now formed a fourth administration.
Rob, we will come back to you in a moment or two, but thanks very much. I want to bring in our Europe regional editor, Paul Moss, who's here in the studio with me. We will stay on these pictures because very, very dramatic pictures. They give you an absolute snapshot of the moments around shots being fired at Slovakia's Prime Minister. We know a number of bullets hitting the Prime Minister, and the still pictures showing just in the moments after they actually get him back into the car before they rush him to hospital. Paul, I know you are looking at the latest in terms of his possible condition. What more are you hearing?
Well, I should stress this is just one report, but Reuters, the news agency, is quoting the Slovakian government office as saying that Robert Fico is in a life-threatening condition. We also have a rather strange statement I'm trying to quite understand from the government, which says Robert Fico's transport to Bratislava would take too long, given necessity of acute treatment. Now, we were told he was being taken to the capital. It is indeed a long way. This town where it happened is right in the middle of Slovakia. I'm trying to understand what this means. Are they possibly suggesting that if they'd taken him to Slovakia, it was, to put it euphemistically, not in order to treat him? But it is very hard to follow, slightly conflicting evidence.
My reading of that was it just simply underlines the seriousness of what is happening.
Maybe
they haven't got a huge amount of time, and so they've got to get him to the most appropriate facility as quickly as possible.
Yeah, maybe they're saying that he didn't go to Bratislava as the initial reports were telling us because the treatment was so serious, that the condition was so serious. As I say, we are in the realms of a certain amount of speculation at the moment, but that is an official statement from the government office. Apparently, Robert Fico is in a life-threatening condition, and that certainly goes with the suggestion I think I heard you make earlier, which is that he received 2 shots, one in the abdomen and possibly one in the chest, which does sound more serious.
And Rob, I think, was adding to that, talking about 4 or 5 shots being fired and some suggestions perhaps more than the 2 injuries. So all of these details emerging. It is an initial observation, but it is interesting that quite early detail is coming from the Interior Ministry, is coming from the government, is coming from the hospital. So a clearer picture is emerging. But Paul, tell us more about this man, the Prime Minister.
As I think Rob has suggested, he was, to say the least, a divisive figure and always set out to be. Bear in mind, Slovakia is a pretty young country. It only came into existence in 1993 when Czechoslovakia split up. And in that time, and democracy relatively new, only a few years since that happened, since it had emerged from the Soviet bloc. And in that time, Slovakia has had a lot of what people euphemistically describe as colourful characters, with ideology maybe not quite so important. Robert Fico himself started out as being considered very left-wing. He's now considered very right-wing. What's been consistent is this, yes, colourful personality.
And did he have obvious enemies?
I wouldn't want to name enemies, but a man as divisive and as brash in what he says would certainly have made enemies. I mean, this was someone who, I was just looking for examples. When a journalist criticised him, he said, "Should I go over there and give you a slap?" On another occasion, he referred to the media in general as a corrupt gang of swines. He did fall from power because of allegations that he was involved in corruption. Now, these allegations were never proved, but the man who was investigating and the journalist who was investigating, Jan Kuciak, he was very involved in investigating corruption and organised crime. And when he investigated the affairs going on with Robert Fico, he was assassinated. So, as Rob says, politics in Slovakia can be febrile. The election campaign at the end of last year saw brawls breaking out amongst actual representatives. I saw people going out campaigning, quite senior figures of the party, getting into fist fights.
Paul, I'm watching, just so our viewers know, 4 or 5 different sources of pictures coming into us. So new information, new images, new witness account coming in all the time that we will get onto the screens and update you with as soon as we can. I'm seeing, as I'm speaking, an eyewitness just describing what she saw. She's right there at the scene. So I'll bring you that account in a moment or two. But great shock. Well, I was reading out the brief statement from Rishi Sunak, but we've had a number of statements from a number of European leaders. Huge shock that this should happen, on European soil at what seems to be just an ordinary standard gathering.
And I'm noticing, I mean, some of them are rather pointed. There was condemnation of the attack from Slovakia's president, Zuzana Kaputova. I should explain, she is politically at the opposite end to Robert Fico, very much opposes him, but she has said she's shocked by this brutal and reckless attack. Also, Ursula von der Leyen, she makes a rather pointed comment. She says she strongly, the EU Commissioner, she says, President of the EU Commission, she says, I strongly condemn this attack. Such acts of violence have no place in our society. They undermine democracy. Now, why that's rather pointed is some members of the EU have at times accused Mr. Fico himself of undermining democracy. I don't know if that was a particularly pointed comment. And also, particular shock from Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of neighbouring Hungary. He described it as a heinous attack against my friend. And Robert Fico certainly is a friend of Viktor Orban. They have very similar politics, very similar attitudes. Share also, by the way, an affinity for Vladimir Putin. Robert Fico is seen as someone close to Russia. He fought this election that he just took into power by saying, I don't want us giving any more arms to Ukraine. Now, that will certainly have made him some enemies, I would have thought. Certainly people were very angry when he said that.
Paul, stay with me because, as I've been saying, there is so much coming in all of the time, line by line, image by image. But let's go back to Sarah Sincerova, that freelance journalist based in Bratislava. And Sarah, in terms of the information you are hearing, the latest, just bring me right up to date.
Right. So what we are hearing, apart from politicians, European and Slovak leaders condemning the attack, we are hearing that the shooter would have been a 71-year-old man from the town of Levice. He would have shot Robert Fico with a weapon, a pistol that he was holding legally. The cause, obviously, of the attack is not yet fully known. I am just hearing that Ursula von der Leyen has also just condemned the attack, as well as the Slovak President Petr Pellegrini.